to another episode of the Daggers and Lyds podcast. It's always good to have your company, and Daggers, it's always good to see your face on the screen. We've got lots to chat through today.
Yes,
the
we
WPL
do.
International Women's Day is also not far away, so we've got a nice little feature to share with you on that. And then, as ever, we keep you up to date with the news that is happening here in England domestically. But first of all, Daggers, how are you? You've got a bit of a bronze to your face there, I noticed.
Well, I
Been
would
spending a
hope
bit of
so. No,
time in the sun.
it's just because I've not shaved. That's what it is. And so actually, I just look dirty. But I can assure you I'm not. I've had a shower. No, obviously, you managed to get a little bit some time in sunshine. We were in, when we started in Vadodara, we were in sort of like very much like a business hotel, lovely spot, but there was no real place to sort of hang out. So you went for walks and went and see the local area and that sort of thing. And similar as we are now here in Lucknow, very similar types of hotel. We were lucky in Bengaluru that we had a bit of a chill out area and a pool and that sort of thing. And we always get taken, as you know, very well taken care of very well. And so, yes, little bits. One thing I do have a lot of, not sunshine or brownness or anything like that, mosquito bites.
Oh, lovely.
I have that type of skin, especially around the ankles,
that
yes. Mosquitoes love. I feel I'm like their porterhouse steak. And so they have got properly stuck into my ankles. But otherwise, no, having a great time. It's coming to an end soon. I leave in around about 4 days' time. But what a wonderful experience, as you know full well. And just a thrill to be out here, seeing the cricket, seeing different parts of India, and seeing how the competition sort of progresses year on year.
Yeah, well, it's been fascinating to watch back home. As we've mentioned before, the timings are so good here in England. It's like mid-afternoon, you can whack the TV on and watch the games until early evening. But it's been interesting how it's been unfolding. I'll just give an update of the standings, because we are coming to the back end now of the group stages. So obviously Delhi Capitals, they've got one game left. They're top of the table as we speak. We're recording at the moment at 11:15 in the morning UK time on Thursday the 6th. So by the time you're listening to this, we probably have a few more games under the belt. But Delhi Capitals are top. Gujarat Giants, they're going well. They're second, just behind Delhi Capitals. Mumbai Indians are third. They've got 3 games in hand, so you would imagine they've got a really good opportunity to try and get into that second place, or maybe even past Delhi Capitals. RCB, who started so well, have just managed to find themselves on a losing streak, unfortunately. And the UP Warriors are struggling, I think, is fair to say. Obviously, there are games to go, so we'll keep a close eye on that. But what's your thoughts been on it so far, Daggers? There's been super overs, there's been close games, really good personal performances.
So what I kind of look at is sort of trends throughout the tournaments and that sort of thing. And Delhi Capitals, and just from a table perspective, the Delhi Capitals have had a weird kind of run. They had back-to-back games at the Chinnaswamy. They won both of them.
Yeah.
That can be quite hardcore, especially in this sort of environment as well. It's quite intense. But they've gone on a winning streak of 3 games. They will finish in Lucknow. They don't play at all in Mumbai. They will in the finals or the eliminator.
Yeah.
So the sides, and I understand why, because when you're in Gujarat, the Gujarat Giants need 3 home games, and when you're in Bengaluru, RCB needed 4 home games, because you want to try and get as many people as you can watching the local sides. And now we're here in Lucknow, where the UP Warriors, it's their hometown, and they get 3 games here as well. Meanwhile, the Mumbai Indians only play 1 game here, and then they have got back-to-back games when the roadshow goes to Mumbai. So it's a little bit strange how it may look to some strange how they designate the fixture list, but there is a good reason behind it. Delhi Capitals have been on a great run. Meg Lanning, nice to see her back in the runs 2 games ago. Shafali Verma has had a really good tournament. I still don't think people bowl in the right areas to Shafali Verma. With the way that she played, actually against the UP Warriors at the Chinnaswamy in Bengaluru, I thought Chanel Henry bowled to her brilliantly, and the UP Warriors bowled to her brilliantly and kept her quiet, and I think that's what you've got to do. However, in the WPL, it's great to see Indian players have success because that really does galvanise the tournament. And you expect the overseas players to do well because they're world class. But DC look like they've got the most rounded team. They bat so deep. They've got loads of bowling options, and they do look odds on to go straight through to the final. Now, Mumbai Indians can catch them and can overtake them if they win out from here. Their net run rate would have to be better. So still quite a big ask for the Mumbai Indians to do that, but they're well placed to qualify for the eliminator anyway. Where we're at is the other three teams. Now, traditionally, they have you have managed to qualify for the eliminator if you have won 4 games. Gujarat have won 3. They have never been into the eliminator. They have finished 5th in the first 2 years. I think it would be great for them. Led by Ash Gardner, a posse of young bowling talent who I'm really excited about. And, Deandra Dottin's come in and proved her worth. Phoebe Litchfield came in for Laura Wolfhart because she was going through a bit of a bad run. So the Gujarat Giants have got a 70% chance of getting to the eliminator. I think they just need to win 1 out of their last 2 games. As for RCB and the UP Warriors, they need to win out to have any chance. And it's looking a bit of a struggle for them because I just don't think they're quite the side they were last year, and I think the UP Warriors may have even regressed a little bit.
What about the toss? Because that's been quite influential, hasn't it? Do you see that changing? Because teams are wanting to chase, aren't they? And they seem to be doing that more often than not successfully.
Yeah, it's a good question because in Vadodara, in Gujarat, there was dew around, which naturally makes sense to sides wanting to chase. It will give them an advantage. The ball comes on a little bit better. Having said that, all 6 sides won chasing, right? Having said that, if the Gujarat Giants could catch in that first game, they would have beaten RCB. They dropped 3 or 4 chances. They dropped Risha Ghosh first ball, and then she went and got 60-odd not out off 25 balls or whatever it was. So they could have won that game batting first with 200 on the board. The second game, DC versus the Mumbai Indians, that was a last ball thriller, and had a few decisions gone the Mumbai Indians' way, that could have been them winning that game batting first. Similarly, when you move to the Chinnaswamy, UP Warriors did win a game batting first, I think against the Delhi Capitals. There was the super over, that could have gone either way for the side batting first. So there has been a trend, I think, honestly, because of the way things panned out, it got into sides' heads. We aren't chasing, so we're going to lose this game. Now, that's not what they would have said, but I think it's an undercurrent and a trend. What's interesting now, having moved to Lucknow, is that the Gujarat Giants put on 180 and defended it very comfortably, rolling out UP Warriors for just over 100 in the first game here. So maybe there's no dew here either. Maybe there's a change of surface and a change of dynamic in that. And I think that will give sides heart who do choose to bat first or end up batting first.
Yeah, I was going to ask you as well, do you think that's linked to, because you obviously get a better sense of it when you're at the grounds and you can see it on the TV, we can't see the boundary sizes, so I know, having been out there the first couple of years, I can't remember where we were, I think it was Delhi, but one boundary was so small, literally you could chip it and it would have been 6, so I wonder if that's a factor as well with the chasing, that teams know they can catch up because the boundaries are small, or has that changed this year?
No, I think the boundaries are very similar sizes. The Chinnaswamy, and look now where we are now is in a vast surface area, but they've moved the boundaries in from the edge, probably 20 to 25 yards, and that looks strange to me because these players are hitting boundaries, 75, 80, 90 metres. When the boundary at one stage, so the first game, the boundary leg side or offside, depending on where you were, was 50 metres. And towards third, it was 45 metres. I'm like, well, now over on the other side, it was 60 and stuff. So they're trying to keep it, I think, in and around 55 metres. Generally speaking, if you move a pitch to the left or the right, that changes. But that 110-metre kind of limit is stuck in place. I think they can afford to move the boundary sizes out next season. I really do. Even if it's by 5 or 6 metres, I think it makes it worthwhile. But of course, they want to see boundaries being hit. They want to see sixes being struck. And I understand that too, as well. So I think there's a happy ground to be found. And I think a 60-metre boundary is more than worth doing for next year. But as regards the trend, I actually think it was a mental thing. Oh, we're not batting. We're chasing. Oh, we're going to win this game. And I don't think necessarily, I think that a huge percentage would have won batting second. But in Bengaluru and here at Lucknow, there's not that much dew, if any, at all. So the conditions don't change an enormous amount.
Well, it'd be interesting to see how it pans out towards the back end. And like as always, it's so interesting, isn't it, with tournament cricket, because when you are moving around venue to venue, you quite quickly have to adapt to the conditions, because the trends that were in place in one venue just don't come into play. So it is those teams who can adapt quickly and most, I guess, flexibly as well, isn't it?
What have you made of it back home watching on TV?
I've enjoyed it. I think the closeness of some of the games, I think, has been brilliant. I think that for me should be like one of the things that any franchise tournament strives for, because it brings in more eyes on the screen. It creates heroes as well, which is something we listened a little bit about from Anjum Chopra, who you spoke to earlier. So I think the fact there's been close games, I think, has been brilliant. I think the toss has so far played quite a big part. So hopefully that will change towards the back end as we get into the last group games and the eliminator and also the final. But it's been good, as you say, to see not just the big names perform, but the younger talent perform as well. I saw a Mumbai Indians game when Amanjot Kaur finished the game off for MI after they had lost the top order. So I think performances like that from the young domestic players, I know she's played for India, but she's very much on the fringes still, I think is really good to see. But as I mentioned, Daggers, you did chat to Anjum. How was she?
You know what? She's great, and she was on great form. She said to me, actually, she said, well, you've not had me on the Daggers and Lyds podcast. I said, Anjum, let's do it then, because she's so busy over here in India. She's got so much going on, and she's so in demand. So when she said that, I went, right, let's set something up, and it was great. We tried to find a sort of relatively quiet spot. So we were actually in the sort of part of the hotel lobby, so there was music playing over and it was actually during the Champions Trophy game that we spoke. But you know, we don't get a great deal of information about what goes on behind the WPL and domestic structure in India and where they're at, and the difficulties that they potentially face or the ease of everything, you know. So it was fascinating to chat to her, and I really enjoyed getting stuck in with some of the topics that we covered.
Yeah, well, let's listen to hear what she had to say. You started off asking her about the first 3 years of the WPL and if she feels that it's starting to make a stronger Indian women's cricket team.
I see, the idea is obviously, you know, for understanding where we want to be, of course we want to be the world champions. We want the Indian team to do well. We want a nice pipeline of cricketers coming out and doing really well, playing for India globally, taking the sport to the next level. I mean, that's obviously the base or the top line, whatever you say. But what happens between this is, look, we have to before we take a step forward, let's take a step back. Why was T20 franchise cricket created? For a reason, because you wanted more people to follow, you wanted people to have a base, or have a connect with a franchise, have a fan following, not just country following, have a fan following, and taking the sport in different ways, making it more and more attractive for so many other people. It's not that it's not attractive, but when you talk franchise cricket, you talk of MS Dhoni, there's a complete different fan following, or let's say idol worship when you have MS Dhoni and the yellow in whichever part of the country he plays. You talk of Virat Kohli, you talk of Rohit Sharma, you talk of Jasprit Bumrah. There is a global audience of Jasprit Bumrah. You come into so when we take a step back to understand why is this franchise cricket created, it's larger than the sport.
Right.
Apart from the idea being that the sport must get highlighted, noticed, the players become idols, because without the idol worship we cannot have a sport driven. So it is like a hand and glove kind of a movement.
Right.
But at the end of the day, it is still business of cricket. So you can't expect people to invest millions of dollars or billions of money into this and then say it's just for the love of the game. It is.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it has to be business as well. So from where the point that I will take forward from whether how WPL sits today is much better. But 3 years, okay. Another 3 year cycle when we have it, then we will assess from where we started to where we are moving. It will take a bit of a time for it to literally be one of those accepted sport or games like the IPL. But even if you're on that pathway of acceptance, I'm not saying it's not accepted, but we're talking of a small country.
Yeah.
You know, small country, it takes time for everyone to get noticed because everybody is busy in their own life. So idea would be to have the sport, churn out match winners, international stars, but also at the same time have people attached to the sport, attached to the individual in larger ways than just one.
Because obviously we see, I mean, the only one that we really see get that sort of highlighting is Smriti Mandana. She's on adverts and she's very marketable and it's sold, and the reaction when we're in the Chinnaswamy Stadium and she comes and tosses, we can barely hear ourselves think, given the reaction of Smriti. And I'm sure other stars will start to emerge. One aspect of the WPL I've really liked, and this is looking from the outside in, is that it started small in Mumbai. Last year it went to two places, in Bangalore and then to Delhi. Now we have taken it to Vadodara, who I thought was fantastic. I really enjoyed the time there. And we're in Lucknow now. Let's talk expansion. Because we can say, well, it should be 8 cities, it should be 10 cities. What is the likelihood, do you think, of expansion of the WPL, both from a franchise perspective? Will we get 1 or 2, and actually taking it to other parts of the country as well?
See, one good thing for us is that there is a already tried and tested IPL model in front of us. So we don't need to do too many things differently. However, I do feel that, people who are not spoken about is the events team, or the people actually behind the scene who stitch together a tournament, be it IPL, be it WPL, who plan things in advance and who try to implement things to the best of it all. Because this is not just one person coming around drawing the crowds. The tickets need to be made available, the ground needs to be accessible. City, can the domestic cricket board, the Vadodara or the Lucknow or the local association, are they in sync? So there's so many other factors. So there's an events team which actually takes cues from whether to go forward or to stay and how to manage it all. And they are like literally the unsung heroes about it for any franchise league. Because we have a successful IPL model, for us to expand is not difficult. But whether that expansion will help or whether that expansion will drop the standard of play.
Are you worried about, or would be, not you, but would the general consensus be a worry about the depth of Indian talent at this moment in time?
Yes, because when the reason why WPL, or let's say many franchise leagues did not begin simultaneously when the men's cricket leagues began, was another reason that we were not sure how many people played. And even if we were sure how many people played, look, we were not world champions. When Australia started their league or when England started their league, they had already become world champions. India has never become a world champion in any format. So we were not very sure how many people would play. Combining Indian players with foreign players and playing, yes, we have quite a few. But whether those players can sustain on their own is a difficult question. Our domestic competition is good, but when you compare it to a result at the international level, we'll say we are lacking far behind. And that's a fact. We are behind. Otherwise, we would have also been world champions. So I'm sure that to turn out 5 teams would have been a very thoughtful process. They would have gone through it, how many teams. Then also whether there'll be franchisees willing to invest in the women's game. Because for them to say, we've invested a huge lot in the men's game, will their pockets agree with it? A, what is the scalability? And number 3, what is the acceptability of the women's game? So everything has to go back and forth with not only the events team or the BCCI or the willingness, it's also about the market forces.
Which brings me to, and you touched on it just there, the domestic pathways and the domestic game outside of the WPL, because is that strong enough? Does that need to be looked at? I know there's the Senior T20 Championship, there's the Challenger T20 Championship, there's also a 50-over competition, which is not very big. I think it's only a 6-game 50-over competition. Does that need looking at it as well? The level below the WPL, which is
So we can always look at formulating different or enhancing the number of matches that teams play. Now, all this while I've been saying we live in a small country, but actually we live in a very large country. And luckily, we do have the numbers. So we have like 38 state teams. When I say state, obviously, if you're in Lucknow, Lucknow is one city. There'll be a team in Lucknow, there'll be a team in Kanpur, but then they all come to play for a state called Uttar Pradesh, UP, and UP is the biggest state in the country, area-wise, distance-wise. So, 38 teams, and even if you have, say, probably a few teams lesser in women's team in matches and say, okay, competitions get over, but though 50-over competitions will take one day, irrespective of the score. If they score 200 or 500 or 20, it will still take one day. So the logistics of it, the number of matches, BCCI conducts more than 2,000 domestic games annually across age groups. Men, women, under 15 boys, girls, everything. 2,000 plus. The last I remember was 2037 as a figure. And fortunately, I can actually boast of it. They're saying that not a single game starts late, not a single toss is missed, not a single team bus fails to arrive at the venue to pick players, and everything fortunately is very streamlined.
Yeah, I was going to say about the streamlining of it. So when we're talking pathways, there is actually a route for the best young female cricketers to actually get their exposure, or, I mean, a lot of it depends on, I'm sure, directors of cricket, and I'm talking going through to the WPL eventually, on whether they get selected or auctioned or...
Yeah, so sorry to cut you, but how I feel is that it's not just about BCCI doing stuff or states doing stuff, it's also about regional associations or bodies doing stuff. Because we can't have a cricket association who's looking at domestic and international level, going right down to the bottommost city or a province or a very small village and identifying talent. There is a system. There are cities. There's a city association. Then there is a state association. Eventually, the state association is reporting into the BCCI, because there are people who are looking at the state bodies. So it's not about BCCI as a country's national body looking at it. There are people lower down. It's like CEOs, managers, assistant managers, senior staff, and then so on and so forth. So I guess the push will get propelled by the fact that there are more local tournaments which get added on. Because if there are more local tournaments, then players will get those confidence of playing friendly cricket and competitive cricket getting into their state teams. The state standard will automatically come up if you have more club cricket. We don't have club cricket. We don't have friendly matches being played. If we do, then it's very much an isolation. Like I used to play friendly matches, but I used to play with the boys, not with the girls. Every weekend we'll go and play a couple of matches wherever we are playing, friendly matches. But so that culture needs to come into the women's game. So it's not, you're not dependent only on Ranji Trophy or on an IPL to get noticed. You're coming through the ranks in domestic cricket as well. So even if you're not picked for the WPL, doesn't matter. There is cricket, there's
still cricket,
there's test match, ODI, T20 cricket, there is friendly cricket. You're still making a mark and knocking the doors of an international team. The moment you get an opportunity, you're there because you've done a body of work in domestic cricket.
Brilliant to hear from Anjum then and get her thoughts on where she thinks the WPL is in terms of creating that next sort of flow of Indian players. What did you make of that, Daggers? She spoke a lot about idols as well and creating heroes, which is obviously a big part in making sure young girls pick up a cricket bat as well.
And I think we're seeing the results of that a little bit. I think, youngsters who might have been playing at, 3 years ago, they were 14, 15 years of age kind of thing, and then seeing that women can be on the big stage in dazzling lights as big as the IPL. We get the same TV broadcast. It's not cheap. It's exactly the same. Everything is exactly the same as the IPL. So when you're looking at that as a 13, 14, 15-year-old young woman player and thinking that, that's for me, that's a potential career path, I'd like to go and do that and have the same sort of career as some of the players that we are witnessing right now, it gives them, it's the whole see it, be it thing, isn't it? And this has been, domestic cricket was never seen in the way that it is right now with the advent of the WPL. I hope it expands. I'm not a business person. I don't know what the finances are behind it, but I do hope it expands. I think they will make sure that there is the depth of quality talent available from a domestic standpoint before they do that. But I think we're not far away from that now. But just generally speaking, you know, having these idols that they can see. So, you know, Smriti. I mean, Smriti's the biggest. She's the biggest.
Yes.
And when you get to the Chinnaswamy, you felt it. It's deafening. When she even just comes onto the ground, and this hero worship, which we don't necessarily have back in the UK or any other cricket countries, you know, Pakistan have it, of course, and Sri Lanka and stuff, but it's a very subcontinental thing, where, you know, still on the adverts here, who are the players that they put on the advert screen? MS Dhoni. You know, MS Dhoni, Virat, Rohit, Hardik Pandya. And it's this hero worship which gets people into the stands, it gets people views on TV. And now you've got a, you know, cluster of players who, from the women's game, actually provide that for fans. So really interesting how she sort of says it works here, which it doesn't necessarily in other countries.
Yeah, and I think it's We've mentioned the crowds and obviously the TV coverage as well, and how important that is in creating interest, because I think what we have over in England is similar, but we don't get the sort of fanatic fans who come out and they are so attached to certain players. So whichever franchise a player is playing for, that's who they're supporting. So it feels like, and I feel like Anjum was alluding to this at times, it feels like it isn't always necessarily the team that is supported, it's the player that is supported. So if Smithy suddenly went to play at Delhi Capitals, I just wonder how many fans she would take with her to there. It's very different in that way, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a great point that led, is that, you know, soon enough there will be more. And the only person I see on adverts out here on the TV is Smriti. And you know, I don't see Harmanpreet doing it, many of it, or Rishi Ghosh, or, you know, that, you know, the only other person I would expect kind of would be Elise Perry. But even then, she wouldn't be necessarily on adverts. You want an Indian player on television adverts. And I know that's just one little aspect of it, but it's something. There's something in that. But what is interesting is also the success of the side. RCB are going to fill the place anyway. It doesn't matter. And the fact that Smriti plays for them is an added bonus for them, because they're fanatic about their side. The feeling up here in Lucknow, there's only one game, and it's a magnificent, vast 50,000 seat stadium. Teams not doing well, so that might have a bearing on it. Apart from Deepti, there's no real big name Indian player.
Yeah.
And, you know, there was probably, I'm guessing here, but it looked sparse. I don't think the thirst for cricket in UP, in Uttar Pradesh, I don't think is as big as it is in other parts of the country. So that's something that they might want to look at and the like. But again, it's the first time they've been here. You've got to give it time to sort of develop a little bit.
Yeah, and I think over time as well, it'll be interesting to see which other teams might be interested in having a franchise, because it will happen, won't it? It's inevitable.
It will. I think there's two, Lyd. I think there's two that they would love. One is CSK. And the other is KKR, Kolkata Knight Riders. I think they're two big hubs that they would love to try and cash in on.
Yeah, and obviously that then has implications in other tournaments around the world. We've seen, you know, some of the IPL teams buy some of the 100 teams, so that'll be interesting how that plays out. One of the other things that you spoke to Anjum about was if there is a new breed of Indian cricketer coming through. You've already touched on it, the young fast bowlers that we're seeing come through, which have been few and far between. But let's hear Anjum's thoughts on that, and then we'll get your thoughts on that, Daggers.
It's nice to see seam bowlers, because we don't, in the country, have never boasted of seam bowlers.
Well, it was Julan, really. It was Shikhar Pandey for a little bit, but Julan was 20 years worth of Indian seam bowling, wasn't it?
Yeah, so, but for a young seamer like a Kranti God, who's probably 20, 21, or probably Joshita, who's just played under 19, look at them when they would have stepped onto the cricket field, or look at them when they would have, you know, picked up the cricket ball and started playing cricket. Very recently they would have done it. But at the end of the day, we don't boast of such cricketers who are, you know, playing cricket because, you know, something must have motivated them to play cricket. And it's nice. We don't talk of so many seam bowlers. we used to talk of spinners, but now we're talking of seam bowlers, which is very good. And I think it's just a generation. Somebody likes to bowl fast, somebody like a Kanika Ahuja likes to have an all-rounded game, somebody like a Richa Ghosh is coming to the ranks of hitting the long ball. And look, there's so much of cricket on television. There is so much of cricket that
do you think that's what they see? They see IPL, then they have had the WPL, and almost think that could be me. Is that actually what
IPL definitely. IPL definitely has played a major impact, has made a difference and has created an impact. But also, let's not forget the fact that a younger kid or a youngster will always get encouraged from home.
Yeah.
So it's also about the parents who will say, like, we do want. So how a young cricketer has a ambition of becoming a Sachin Tendulkar or a Virat Kohli or any of the new kids on the block. Similarly, you want that generations down the line, you want women or like females also wanting to aspire to become a cricketer and say, I want a career in the world of sport and in cricket.
Yeah, having those idols those women cricketers to actually look up to see Smriti Mandana doing her thing, whether it be overseas but especially from India, Harmanpreet and Smriti Mandana and Richa Ghosh and Shafali Verma and Jemmy Rodrigues and all of these inspiring youngsters to actually pick up bats, pick up balls and go down to the Medans and go and play some cricket. Just quickly, and a final question on the WPL, where do you see it in 3 years' time?
I would say that it should grow. It's not about, for me, growth of number of teams from say 5 to 6 or 7 or 8. I'll say let's have, even if we get a team added or whatever in the next 3 years, I will say that it should touch the nerve of the people and say, right, there is a women's cricket competition which is happening and it's very good. It's very competitive. We must go to the ground to watch the game. And if there is a men's cricket match, and I'm not talking of an Indian cricket match, men's cricket match happening any other than the Indian men's team playing, and a WPL match happening, people across the screens, whether they're watching on mute or in big places, should say, can we switch on to the women's Premier League match rather than watching a men's cricket match? I think, look, we're not competing against the men's team again, I repeat, but any other men's team playing, you say, can we switch on to the WPL match rather than any other team playing?
And that's actually, I know so it was the final thing, but that's actually where this brand recognition has been actually really important. For someone like RCB, you know, they recognise that, well, they're an RCB men's team supporter, so that automatically an RCB women's team supporter, and that's where we've seen the footfall at the Chinnaswamy Stadium. You can't move for people. There's 30,000 people. It's crazy and bonkers, and at the same time, thrilling to see women's sport being celebrated and supported that way. And they want to see Smriti, and they want to see Richa Ghosh, and they want to see Elise Perry. And that is only a good thing within this country, to have that feeling and that sort of flood of support.
Absolutely. And look at the crowds who have a banner of saying, you know, I am here to watch Elise Perry, or we love Elise Perry, with those boards, and they're, you know, standing in a line. For example, I mean, it's also the credit of Elise Perry, because she's a star. You know, you look at her and she is a star. People who follow women's cricket or follow the sport cannot not know Elise Perry. So it's her skill as well to come into another country and still get the kind of adulation and the respect and the fan following. So which is very good, but if it rubs off on the women's game, be it in the RCB team or Mumbai or wherever, if it gets people to follow the women's game, I think, it's a good start.
And I also think it cannot be too highly stressed that these young Indian players spending time in the company of Elise Perry or Alyssa Healy or Sophie Eccleston or Meg Lanning or whoever it is, and actually sort of saying, poor, that's the standard, that's where we want to be. I think that can only be a good thing, can't it? I won't let you go without this. India women are coming to England later on this summer. What can we... There's no test match, sadly, because we've had a couple of test matches out here. I remember being here for the one in Navi Mumbai, and then you had the Australian team at the Wankhede. There's no test match, but it's going to be 5 T23 one-day internationals. Keenly contested, do you think?
Should be.
Yeah.
Should be keenly contested. I think one more thing what happens is a lot of players have the advantage of coming into India and playing cricket in India. and to know the conditions. I think it's time that when women players also travel to Australia or to England, it's time that they start understanding the foreign conditions and utilizing it to their advantage, not just having one-sided contests. So whilst I will say that it will be a keenly contested game, not because England had a very poor result recently, when they turn around the leaf and the next season starts, I'm sure they'll also understand that, you know, we're playing at home and the home advantage and blah blah. But at the end of the day, if Indian team can go to England and make a strong impression, I think that will be it. And they'll draw the confidence from the fact that the last time they were there, they did reasonably well.
Yeah.
So how it works out, how the confidence and the skill levels match out to the English team should be a good series, and we want a good series, not a one-sided series.
Absolutely. Well, look, thanks for joining us.
My
We're
pleasure.
really grateful, hugely grateful, and keep fighting the good fight over here. And just to say, we love. I know Lydia has not been able to come over because of course she has just given birth, but hopefully we'll be back here next year and can pick up where we left off. But thanks so much.
My pleasure.
I left you hanging there, didn't I?
You
Left you
did.
hanging. I'm not going to edit. I'm not going to edit that. I'm not going to edit that at all.
Looking into the camera. Daggers always looking into the camera. And then making a face.
There you go. Totally unedited. That I'm going to keep that in.
Yeah, very interesting to hear Anjum's thoughts there. Fast bowling stocks in particular, Daggers, that's something that I know is in your wheelhouse. And you mentioned it, Julian Goswami, that was the one fast bowler that they had. Obviously, Shikhar Pandey as well has been there and thereabouts. But what are you seeing now in terms of the young Indian cricketers coming through?
I am seeing a talent pool. And as you mentioned, as was mentioned before, you know, Julian, and then there was Niranjana, the time that you played, and then there was Shikhar Pandey. But you know, otherwise it was kind of spin. Now India will always do spin, and they'll always do it pretty well. I think some spinners are better than others. I think some are fairly sort of routine type of spinners. They've not got something, you know, an X factor about them. Some of them do, like Anjum Chopra last year, the leg spinner. This young Anshri Sharani, left arm spinner, lovely bowler. Minu Mani, I think, is a lovely bowler as well, proper off spinner. So I think there's a separation between, you know, the higher class of spinner than the lower. It's a shame not to have seen Shriyanka Patel this year, but she's been injured. As regards the fast bowlers, there are 5 that I have sort of looked at, and their ages between sort of 18 and 21. Kashfi Gautam at the Gujarat Giants, I think she's got the best economy rate of the WPL. She's properly cool, tattooed up, cool haircut, but she's quality. She really is quality, and has been a big find. She was sold for 2 crore last year, was injured all of the first season for the Gujarat Giants. Now we're coming to see why she was worth so much. She is a high-class talent, in-swinger, but feisty and, you know, combative, and I like that. Also at GG, there's Shabnam Shakil, who we did see a little bit last year. Sadly, she's not played all year, and I'm sort of tearing my hair out going, why are you not playing? You know, you're a young, quick, you know, you can be developed really well. I'd like to see these young quicks playing. Now, Meghna Singh, nothing against Meghna Singh. She's 30 years old. You're not going to learn a great deal about her, and I don't think she's necessarily that good that she sort of warrants a defined place in the side. So I'd like to see some of these younger players. Vijay Jasita, who I saw at the Under-19 World Cup, she came into the WPL. She got smashed around a little bit. Trust me, Lydia, I think she's going to play for India. She is like mini Bhuvaneshwar Kumar, swings the ball both ways, at pace, lovely high straight action. I think she is a serious talent. Also, Kranti Goud at the UP Warriors. Again, another sort of straight line bowler, but can swing it away a little bit. Got tall, lean, can get a bit of extra bounce. And Tita Sari, who sadly has only played a couple of games for DC, but this is one of India's young fast bowlers who's represented their country, should be playing. But there's 5, Lynn, in that sort of age range, which I think is sensational. Remember, Pooja Vestakar is not playing in this WPL either, because she's injured. So there's a lot of things to like coming out of India's fast bowling stocks.
Yeah, and I suppose, like, just to wrap this part up, like, the big question is, how do India put all of this together to become world champions? So they've got arguably what will be the best franchise competition in the world, if it's not already. They've got young players coming through. They have established senior players who are performing really well, more often than not. So what is it that India need to do to put all of that together? Because they have it, don't they? They have the ingredients.
Yeah, they need more cricket, in my opinion. They need to be playing more cricket. And the domestic pathways all well and good, but they don't play club cricket. They have a limited amount of T20 and 50 over cricket, sort of domestically. And I think the pathway can improve. But I would like to see, I would like to see the Indian cricket board take these 5 young fast bowlers who might not be playing for India yet. They may get selected, and so if that's the case, take those young fast bowlers, send them somewhere, send them to Australia. Send them to England, send them somewhere else, or get 20 to 30 cricketers and sort of designate them as the future of Indian cricket and really get them playing a lot more. Get a lot more overs under the leg, into the legs, and get more experiences. Send them over to England and say to Nottinghamshire, to Hampshire, to Warwickshire, can we leave X player with you for a summer? We'll pay for it, kind of thing. But can they get experience with you being in and around? And I think that would be fantastic, because we know and I would like to see the reverse done as well, because the women's game benefits at the end of the day. But we know that the same overseas players are probably going to be in the WPL, in the WBBL, and also in the 100 as well. Yeah. So how are you going to get that experience? So that's what I would like to see. Does that sound fair enough to you?
Yeah, I think that's a great shout. I know England have developed a pace programme as well, where they've sort of picked not necessarily the best young fast bowlers, but the best fast bowlers in the country. And I think Chris Liddell's heading that up, but I think that's a great thing to do. But across all skill sets, I think, using England as an example, get your best spinners, get your best batters, give them real individual and specific experiences. So, yeah, I love that idea, Daggers. Hopefully everyone's listening and they then implement it just off the back of this podcast. You never know.
How often, as I said, that if everybody just listens to us, the world will be a much, much better place. Copyright Signal Lydia Greenway. Let's move on, because yes. The WPL is fantastic. It will continue for a week or so, and then the finals and stuff. And we will, of course, cover that on the podcast. You've had a lovely week. I don't know when you actually recorded this, but International Women's Day is coming up on the 8th of March. And there was a sort of message sent out and by H. Cowan from the ECB that you had gone and spoken to 3 different generations, you being the 4th different generation, about the women's game as a whole. I've watched the full half hour of the interview. It is the loveliest thing. We're going to hear a good chunk of it in a few moments' time. But you obviously led the round table. Just explain a little bit more about how it came about and why you were asked to, not why you were asked to do it, but why it was important to do it.
Yeah, well, it was actually instigated by Hen themselves, Hen Cowan, who, as you know, they were the England media manager. Before that, they worked for the Cricketer, I think it was the Cricketer magazine. I can't remember. They were definitely a journalist, and then England media manager, and now has worked their way up into the ECB, sort of managing media as a whole. And they just came to me and said, "Look, I've got this idea. No one else has done it, and I think we should do it." And it was about getting together a group of women who had played across the generations to share their experiences, but I think more than anything celebrate what the women before us had done to grow the game and to develop it. And I have to admit, Daggers, we filmed it last year, and I look back at it, and that was probably my most favourite day of the year, because I just don't think these women get celebrated enough. I think our history is very short in terms of what's accessible to people these days. I think people who are new to the game now, they don't know about Lynne Thomas and the fact that she scored the first World Cup century. They don't know about Carole Cornthwaite and that she was a winner in the 1993 World Cup. So I think that in itself was great, just to pick their brains. and hear about their experiences. And some of their experiences, Daggers, it would have made you laugh, because Lynne spoke about how their washing, when they were touring India, they put their washing in the morning and they were on their way to training. And you don't even think another thing about it, do you? When you put your washing in a hotel or wherever you're staying, you expect to see it back at some point. But on their way to training, they saw their washing in a river in Kolkata being whacked on rocks to be dried out. And for me, I've told that story already, but we will hear it. We'll listen to it now, actually, shall we? Because it's just such a great clip. We were just chatting about the differences from pay to clothing to equipment to washing being done in the river.
We paid for everything.
Yeah.
We paid for uniform and equipment, bats and pads and gloves.
Yeah.
We paid for everything.
That's so different these days.
Yeah, I know. I feel a bit bad, guys.
And they all had to be white.
Paving the way for us.
Everything had to be white. You couldn't wear any colour at all. And when I played first, we had white blazers.
White blazers?
White blazers.
Okay.
But it was the last year of white blazers.
But that was a nightmare to keep
They
clean.
decided that it wasn't very practical for touring.
Yeah, I bet.
So we went to navy. So we had navy ones for touring. But everything had to be white. And one year, just in 1976, before we played in Lords, Rachel was given a pair of cricket shoes. That was unheard of. But
Oh, wow.
She was given, but they had green stripes on them. So she had to whiten the green stripe before she took the field, didn't she?
Yeah, that happened a lot, yeah.
She had whiten. You had to have, everything had to be white.
And was it like skirts that you didn't wear?
Divided
cricket
skirts.
Divided skirt.
Yeah.
Three-quarter socks.
Yeah.
Oh, how are the grass burns?
And then you
The knee has the knees.
you had to wear your blazer everywhere. When you were waiting to go into bat, you wore your blazer.
Oh, wow.
If you were 12th and you took the drinks on, you went in your blazer.
In your blazer?
In
Wow.
your blazer. You had to wear your blazer all the time. Isn't that right?
That was certainly for the 12th taking drinks out. It was blazers, but it was a bit. By my time, it was a little bit more relaxed as far as sitting
We had
before
to
you went
wear
into bat or
blazers.
anything like that. We didn't have to wear them.
But
then,
waiting to go into bat. We were stuck in these blazers.
What, so whilst you're waiting to bat, you had to wear your blazer and then
you
like
had to wear
take it
your
off?
blazer, you had to take it off.
Oh, wow. You should see some of the stuff our girls wear at the moment. They like turn up to training in Crocs and all sorts of stuff. None of the blazers.
But it's all fitted
Very
now as
strict
well,
rules.
isn't it, Heather, for the women's? Because I know when you started playing, the kit that we got was oversized men's kit, wasn't it? But now you guys have, it's all sort of fitted to suit the female body, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, we just had Castor in actually to sort of check the kit and stuff.
Yeah.
So
You have a
it's
lot
very
of
different
kit
now.
as well.
Yeah, we do get quite a lot of kit. Yeah. I think I'm going to keep quiet actually.
When we went, where were we going? India. And I needed new shirts. So I phoned up the supplier and he said, I'm coming to see you off, I'll bring them to the airport. So he arrived with the shirts, but he brought England hockey shirts. And of course, they're nothing like the cricket shirts. Yeah. So luckily, I'd packed my old ones. But when we were in India, then, of course, we'd put the kit into the hotel laundry in Calcutta, and we put it into the laundry, and then we went on a bus tour. And as we were passing the river, we could see our kit being washed and hammered against the stones.
That's amazing.
That is
isn't it?
amazing.
And so when you travelled and you stayed in hotels, I think before we started this, I said, did you stay in hotels? Obviously, the girls now get to stay in the most amazing places, like 5-star, the Taj Palace and all that sort of stuff. I'm guessing that was nowhere near
Well, we
your
stayed
experience.
on tour. We stayed in private homes, didn't we? That's how I have still so many friends in Australia and New Zealand. We stayed with them. But for test matches, we moved into hotels then, didn't we?
Yeah, that was still the same when I was playing. It very much the same anyway. Yeah.
And you would pay for your hotels as well still?
Once we were out in the other country, whatever it was, then it was covered by their association.
Right.
And when we were there, we were often given an allowance for food each day as well.
Oh, we were never given that.
Yeah, we got onto that by then.
We never given anything for food.
On a home tour, it was different.
Yes.
again, the hotel was covered by the tour or whatever, but you know, all our transport for getting there and everything like that, we paid ourselves.
So you used to drive between the games, not...
Yeah. That's right.
Invariably, we'd be going home.
We're going back to work.
Going home, back to work as well.
For 2 days and then go off again.
Yeah, I remember in 1984 when New Zealand were over. We played a test match here. I finished the match lying on my stomach watching the rest of the game from the pavilion because I'd been hit on the back of my calf and had a bruise about the size of my calf. And I went back to work the next day and had to work about 3 or 4 days that week and then head off for the next match.
No physio or... No.
Nope.
Self-diagnosis.
No, there was a physio at the match, but that was it.
That was all.
I was just
we didn't
deal with it.
Or anything like that.
No, we did.
Dust yourself off and off you go.
You're made of tough stuff, weren't you?
We did have a manager.
Did they do everything though? The manager was the coach, the physio, the doctor.
To be honest, Rachel did everything with us. Yes, Rachel did everything.
Oh, yeah.
Well, she had so much to do with obviously the first World Cup and Sir Jack Hayward, and you would have had a up-close look at how that all unfolded, I can imagine.
Yes, between the two of them, they managed to pull it off, and it was a great success. I think we had a lot of publicity after that, much more than we'd had before. You know, people started to think, oh, there is a women's team.
Yeah.
But I think it's the World Cup that started that off.
Definitely. Do you remember much from that World Cup?
I don't remember a lot. I remember the final. Well, we won, didn't we? I remember the final, and we were introduced to Princess Anne. And I always told Rachel, "Now, don't forget, I'm Welsh, I'm not English." So every time she introduced me, she'd say, and she introduced me, she mentioned my name to Princess Anne. And before Rachel could say anything else, she said, "Oh, yes, you're the foreigner in the team."
What about you, Heath, for the 2017 World Cup final? Just like that day in itself was unbelievable, wasn't it?
Oh, it was crazy.
In terms of the crowds.
Yeah, I remember the batters, we used to go early in a little car to get in early for the nets, and I just remember seeing the members just queued all the way around, and it was sort of 3 hours before the game, and like you just got this sense that, okay, this is amazing. And then I remember doing the national anthem. It was so Eileen Ash rang the bell, who I'd
you did a bit of yoga with her.
Yeah, I did. I went to her house in Norwich a few years before that, and she's an amazing lady. I don't know if you spent much time with her, but she was lovely. So it was really nice to see her do that. And then they put Rachel on the big screen. Obviously, she's no longer with us, and just the enormity of the day, I think, was pretty cool. And seeing like loads of people that had kind of helped us to get there. Like lots of ex-players were there, and it was a cool day. Obviously, winning it as well in front of a home crowd was
That's what I wish now. I wish Rachel was here now to see the massive change that's come about. You know, that she instigated, really.
Do you think she had any idea how much her legacy is felt within all the generations across the women's game? Do you think she would have been aware of that?
She did see it start, you see, to change, you know.
It takes people like her to create change, doesn't it?
Yeah, because Rachel's last tour was the World Cup in New Zealand, which was my first. I did actually get to play with her for England.
So was she captain then?
No, she wasn't.
I played then, didn't I? In '82.
You were international. You were international.
The captain of the international 11.
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay,
I'd finished playing for England, so I was captain of the international 11.
And that was my debut. Was the match against the international 11.
Oh wow! So that's amazing.
I have to get the scorecard up for that. See how you all did.
How did you do on your debut?
I think I got 4 wickets.
Yeah.
Oh, not bad.
You got 4 wickets.
Yeah, I got 4.
Yeah, you got 4 wickets.
Definitely got 4 wickets.
It's just so lovely. It really is. And I can't recommend it highly enough to anybody. It's on the ECB website, the full half-hour interview. And just the joy and the surprise and the reaction of everybody to each other's particular role within that period of time as an England player. The white blazer thing. The white blazer thing cracking me up where you're waiting to bat in your blazer. This is one aspect of the interview that was on that's on the full half hour. Having to wear your blazer, even though you're playing in the game, having to wear your blazer as you wait to bat, and that just sort of blew my mind. From as lovely as it is, and you touched on this a little bit earlier, and it's fantastic. Go and check it out. Go and listen to the whole thing because it will blow your mind for the things that we didn't get in that 9-minute clip there. The appreciation for today's player, or from today's player, to those who have been before. And, what did professional contracts start in 2015 or whatever, but, the modern player now, it's a totally different landscape to how it was. And those who paved the way, and it's brilliant that this can be celebrated. Do you feel it would be nice to actually have more input from the players of yesteryear to today's player?
Yeah, I do. I think that's one of the things that always, within my gut, I just feel disappointed about, that the players who ultimately built the way for the professional era they've sort of been left by the wayside. Don't. I think when you compare it to the men's game, you see a lot of ex-male former cricketers who are in a lovely box somewhere watching the England men's team or their county team, and I just think our women players deserve that as well. I had a message from Catherine Leng, who was one of my first teammates when I made my debut. She was an amazing left-handed batter. And she just said, I listened to that piece. And she said it was brilliant. Like, it just brought a big smile to her face. And I just said, we need to get you on the next one. And I was being serious. I want to hear more from those former players, because they're made of strong stuff. They have brilliant experiences to share. They have excellent cricket brains, but I don't think we lean on them enough to, I think, firstly understand more the history of the game, but also, to maybe have their input. I don't know in what way. I don't know if you've got any ideas in what that could look like, but I just think there needs to be more appreciation of what the players have done before us.
I don't know how you would do it. Like I say, turning up to games and that sort of thing. But I think it's a more personal involvement as well. An understanding of how hard the women's game has had to work to get to where it is now, and to have it properly treated. And it's still got work to do. Let's be right. It still has a lot of work to do. But over the past decade or so, it has made enormous strides in the consciousness of the cricketing fraternity. I would like to see that not only are they coming to matches, being invited to matches, having the boxes and all of that sort of stuff, but they get direct access to players, and for players to actually go, do you know what? This is really, and I think it would be a very good grounding to say what they have done to what now, you're on a nice big contract, or you've got, professional, this is the career that you've chosen, and to understand what they had to do to represent their country. The players nowadays are good enough to represent their country, as were they, but it's a totally different scenario. And I think almost not turning around to the modern player, please don't get me wrong, and turning around and saying, look how lucky you are, kind of. No, that's not what I mean. It's just an appreciation and understanding of how hard it was, what players of those eras had to go through, and the recognition of that, just to keep one grounded, and to keep and to be, not to sort of attack the modern player, not at all. No, that's not what I mean. But I think just an understanding, and that direct, spending an hour in the time of Lynne Thomas, that would be brilliant. It was brilliant to do it for half an hour and with others around, but can you imagine a young player just chatting through and getting that understanding? I think it'd be good for them.
I agree. I think back to when I played for Kent, and we were really lucky. We had Jan Britton coached us for a season, which was unbelievable. Like, I was well aware of who she was, even though she would have played a long time before me. But thankfully I had good senior players around me who educated me on who Jan Britton was. We had Barbara Daniels as well for a period. And so I feel I was lucky because they were a lot more accessible. But whereas now, I think because of the professionalism, there's that bubble around the players, and it makes that that connectivity between the current players and the former players pretty much non-existent. So, yeah, we'll see. Again, Daggers, hopefully people are listening. Hopefully we'll see things
But it is that classic case of how do you know where you're going unless you know where you've been. And that's, you know, the path that those players... and I include you in that as well, because you remember we're not in a professional era. You mentioned about the £400 lottery funding that you had to have a job. You had to try and earn a crust somehow. And before everything did become professional. And so that is an absolutely vital part of the modern game, is to know your history, I think, to understand it. As a player, I'm talking about, to understand what has gone before you to allow you to do what you're doing now. And not, like I say, I can't stress enough, not to attack the modern player, but to let them understand. And I think that understanding can only be a good thing and inspire that player to go on and do even more in the game and for the game as well. Yeah.
I think that's a nice place to finish there, Daggers, just before we wrap up the pod, just with some domestic news really here in England, because there has been a few exciting announcements around the domestic game. So Lauren Rolls has been appointed head coach of the Gloucestershire women's team, which is a great appointment actually. I think for people who don't know her, she played for Gloucestershire for a long time ago, but she played for them for a number of years. More recently, she's coached the England men's disability team, and that's a role that she's going to continue doing alongside her role with Gloucestershire, which is great. And she's also been the assistant coach and regional talent manager at the Central Sparks for the last 4 years. So brilliant to see a really strong female coach come into I guess the professional era and get that opportunity. Similarly, Rachel Priest has been appointed head coach of Glamorgan. Now, people who don't know Rachel Priest, she was a brilliant player for New Zealand for a number of years, wicket keeper, opening batter, feisty. Oh my gosh, she was feisty. But I chatted to her last year, and she's got a brilliant cricket brain, but she's one of those, she's a bit like Catherine Sciver-Brunt, feisty on the pitch, but off the pitch, very softly spoken. She's got an excellent cricket brain, and she's got a nice manner about her as well. So they were 2 appointments, Daggers, I was really pleased to see, because we often moan about the lack of female coaches. Totally. So it's great to see that opportunity. And then lastly, a bit of news from Somerset. Sophie Luff has been named their captain for the upcoming season, and no doubt seasons ahead, and that is a brilliant appointment to see. So that's the news here in England. There is an international series going on, which is Sri Lanka against New Zealand. The first ODI has been rained off, so we haven't got too much to bring you there, but hopefully we get the next game, which I think is that tomorrow, the next ODI due to start? Nelson. Possibly.
So Friday night or early Saturday morning, whatever the time difference is, in New Zealand, in Nelson.
We keep you up to date there. Daggers, as always, it's good to see you. Don't forget, there's some games coming up in the WPL, but the 2 big games to keep an eye out for are the Eliminator, which is on Thursday the 13th of March, and then the final, which is on Saturday the 15th of March. So yeah, enjoy your next game, Daggers, which I think is in a couple of days' time. So get that face out in the sunshine.
Certainly will.
Go on.
I'll tell you what we will do, just very, very quickly before you say goodbye. The 100 draft is coming up on the 12th of March. So our next podcast will not only be reviewing what's happened in the WPL, but we'll have all of the news and reaction to that, to the filling of spaces in the 100 draft.
Brilliant.